What's up, y'all? So I'm going to do a quick comparison video between the Leslie Studio 12 and the Motion Sound Pro 145. So these are both, you know, I don't want to call them Leslie clones and I don't want to call them Leslie simulators, but they're basically, it's a rotating speaker inside of a cab, right? We're not talking about simulating that rotation. We're talking about actually having a rotating speaker. And I think the idea of both of these speakers is to try to sound like kind of like the vintage 122, the churchy, the jazzy sound that everybody wants to sound like. I use it 99% of the time for organ, and I'll sometimes play like Rhodes kinds of sounds through it, but for the most part, just organ. So I've been renting the Motion Sound for about 2 months now, so I've gotten quite a bit of use out of it. I've probably played about 10 gigs with it. I've had probably 15 rehearsals with it, and I've only had the Leslie for a couple days. I have both of them right now. I'm going to show you both of them, and I gotta say there are things that I really like way better about the Leslie, but there's actually some things that I like way more about the Motion Sound. So this video is really gonna be mostly kind of an opinion piece. I'm gonna do a second video because I think this one's gonna be too long. I'm gonna do a second video that is purely audio, and I'm gonna show you the difference between the two speakers by playing the exact same audio clip through two different speakers, and let you kind of be the judge of, you know, what they really sound like. So let's see. I think that's everything I want to say. So let's just get right into it. So I'm going to just go over the pros and the cons of the two different speakers. So we're going to start with the Motion Sound. So with the Motion Sound, the first pro is the internal microphones. So I think this is a really, really cool feature, and I'm thinking about modding my Leslie to have this feature, but it has three different internal microphones. It has two on the horn and it has one on the sub. I'm going to show you this a little bit more in detail, but I think it's awesome. And it's got three different XLR outs, so you can send those straight to your sound guy. You don't, like, the mics are inside of the speaker. You don't have to mic the speaker. It has microphones in it. Another pro of the Motion Sound is it has a subwoofer out, which I think is great. Both of these speakers have a 12-inch sub. I think they both have the same size sub. Don't quote me on that. I should probably know that if I'm making this video, but whatever. They both have smaller subs than you really need to play a bass out of. But with that subwoofer out, I plug that into a 15-inch speaker, and it's a great sub, and it really thumps. It sounds good. Another pro of the Motion Sound, it always stops in the front. So when you put it on stop, when you've got fast, you've got slow, and you've got stop. When you put it on stop, it always stops, for the most part, pretty much right at 12 o'clock. And that's obviously great if you don't want that Leslie rotation sound. And for example, I don't know, whatever you're playing out of it that you don't want that rotation, you want to be able to mic it reliably if you're miking it, and you want it to always stop facing the front. And the Motion Sound does that. The last pro is that the Motion Sound is way lighter. It's probably half the sound. I mean, sorry, half the weight. It's crazy light. I can carry the Motion Sound in one arm, and I can carry my keyboard in the other, and I can just, you know, how many Leslies can you carry? That's probably the lightest Leslie that's ever been made. It's crazy. So on to the cons. The sound fidelity, I don't think the sound, not even just the fidelity, I just don't think it sounds as good. The 145 doesn't sound as good. I've really enjoyed playing it over the last 2 months. It's been fun. Like, it's still a rotating speaker, so it still has that really, I don't even know how to put it into words. It has that quality to it that you can't put into words. It's different than a simulation. It's always going to be cool to hear that rotating speaker, but I don't think the sound quality is as good as the 12. The quality is just not as good. It seems more cheaply made. It's maybe that's partly because it's lighter, but not just that. And I'm going to get into it. I'm going to show you all the speakers. The last con of the 145 is it's not really that loud. I mean, it's loud enough, but it's just barely loud enough. I played a gig with it last night, and at one point of the gig, I had the speaker cranked literally to full volume, and I had my keyboard cranked literally to full volume, and it was loud enough, but it was just barely loud enough. It still sounded good, but it was, I mean, you don't want to have to crank your amp to full volume. I don't like to do that. So that's the pros and the cons of the 145. Let's move on to the Leslie Studio 12. And again, I've only had the Studio 12 for a couple days, So these are kind of my first impressions. I'll probably include one little short clip at the end of this video because I'm playing a gig with it tomorrow. So I'm going to include one little short clip with it to kind of give y'all an idea of what I think about it after playing a gig with it, because at this point I've just played with it in my little apartment. But the first pro of the Leslie 12, I think it sounds way better. I just think it sounds better. I think it has that really nice ringy belly sound that you kind of hear out of the old vintage 122s, and I just think it sounds more like what you want a Leslie to sound like. Obviously it still doesn't have that low end because it doesn't have the big giant 15-inch woofer, but it sounds, I mean, I think it just sounds so much better. I think you get way more fidelity out of the sound in general. Even at half the wattage, the Studio 12 is a 100-watt speaker, whereas the Motion Sound is a 200-watt, and the volume of the Studio 12 is insane. Like, it's too loud. It's not too loud in a bad way, like too loud in a good way. But for this little room, for my apartment, I mean, my neighbors probably already hate me, but they're about to hate me way more now that I have this speaker. It's way sturdier. It's way higher quality. It feels way higher quality, you know. Again, that makes it way heavier, but you know, it just feels like a better piece of equipment. The last pro I would say is that it's way easier to change the speed of the rotation. So what I mean by that is you've got fast and you've got slow, but you can actually change. I'm not talking about going from fast to slow. I'm talking about the actual speed of the fast and the slow. You can make the slow slower or faster, and you can make the fast slower or faster. And it's super easy. It's just a knob. There's one knob for the slow, and I'll show you all this, but there's a knob for the slow and there's a knob for the fast. Whereas on the Motion Sound, you got to get in there with a screwdriver to change those. You can still change them on the Motion Sound, but it's a lot more of an ordeal. So the cons of the Studio 12, for one, there's no sub out. This blows my mind that there's no sub out on this tiny little speaker. I mean, it's not tiny, it's still a big speaker, but it's small compared to a real Leslie or a full-sized 122. And it blows my mind that they didn't put a sub out on this. It's annoying. The other con is there's no easy way to tell if you're going fast or slow. So on the Motion Sound, there's a little light that turns on when you're going fast, and there's no light when you're going slow. And, you know, maybe in the comments I'm going to get roasted and people are going to say, well, why don't you just listen to it? And I agree with that, but I play in multiple 10 or more piece bands. And so when you got 6 horns and a guitar player with distortion and a bass player and a drummer and a percussion player and singers, it's like, sometimes it's kind of hard to hear if you're on fast or slow. So it would be nice to have a little light that just says, oh, you're on fast or you're on slow, because the Motion Sound has that. The next con, it's way heavier. I already kind of talked about this. It is what it is. It's a heavy speaker. Deal with it. It's a Leslie. And then the last con that I'm going to talk about is they claim that the sound when you put it on stop faces the front. And in another video, I showed how it doesn't do that, and I actually read the owner's manual. I read the owner's manual since watching that video, and in the owner's manual, it literally says, you know, it says, oh, by the way, even though those things aren't facing forward, the sound will always project forward, and the subwoofer projector device, whatever that's called, that will point forward. And that's not, I don't know about the claim that the sound will still face forward even if the horns aren't facing forward, but I know for sure the subwoofer doesn't always face totally forward. So it is what it is. I'm going to show you all about that. I think that's about everything. Like I said, as far as specifics go, you know, the Leslie is a 100-watt. It's a tube preamp with a solid state power amp, and the Motion Sound is a 200-watt speaker. It's like a combined speaker. So I think it's a 70-watt speaker for the horn, and it's a 130-watt speaker for the sub. To be completely honest with you, I don't know how electricity works. It's all magic to me, so I don't know what that means. I know that the Leslie is louder, and I think it sounds better. But let's take a look at them, and then again, I'll have a second video that's going to be actual sound. So if you're looking for sound, this isn't your video, but I'm going to get a lot more in depth into the actual amps for the rest of this video. What's up, y'all? So I said I was going to do a update video after I had played a gig with it, and that was like 3 weeks ago. So I kind of like got bogged down with other stuff and like didn't ever finish making this video. So I figured I'd do that real quick. I've played now about maybe 4 gigs with the Leslie Studio 12 at this point, and I gotta say, I love it. I absolutely love it. There's a couple things that I would slightly amend about what I said in this video. The first being the volume of the Studio 12 is really not that much different than the volume of the 145. So there's definitely some moments where I wish I had a little more headroom on the amp, but I think that otherwise, like, it's just an absolutely awesome amp. It really does sound a lot better. I've figured out a way. I'm gonna post another video that is explaining how I figured out how to wire a sub out to it. It's relatively expensive fix, but I don't think anyone was expecting this to be totally cheap to do. It cost me about $200, but I think it was worth it. I think it sounds so much better with the sub out. So I did figure out a way to do that. It is also, I mean, the heaviness, it's insane. Like I said, I played 4 gigs with it, and the first 3 gigs I played with it, I really like felt it for a few days afterwards. So it's something that, as ridiculous as this sounds, I'm doing deadlifts with the amp now. Like I'm literally practicing, like I'm trying to do like, 2 or 3 times a day, like pick it up and set it back down 5 times. Because it's not even just that it's heavy, it is heavy, but it's also very awkwardly shaped. So when you go to pick it up, like you gotta have your back engaged, you gotta have your arms engaged. Like I feel like, if you have proper technique with picking it up, it's not that bad. But the first couple gigs, I didn't know how to lift it, and I hurt my back pretty good lifting it, and my knees actually. And I'm not that old of a dude, and I'm not, so it's worth looking into. I think that's it. It's awesome. I love it. I would highly recommend it. All right, so this is the Leslie Studio 12, as you can see. Excuse these little pieces of tape. These lights are super intense, so I just put these little pieces of tape. I kind of already went over this in my other video, but I'm just going to show it again. So as you can see, we've got just volume control there. We've also got this, we've got our inputs, input for a higher gain and input for a lower gain, or I'm sorry, kind of reverse. So I've got it, well, I don't know. I think it's a high gain and low gain input. We've also got the rotor control. So over there, we've got the foot switch control, and we've got the speed pedal. So essentially the speed pedal, as far as I understand, is like a expression pedal. I haven't even really tried to mess around with it yet. Here we've got the slow and the fast adjustment, which is kind of what I was talking about, which makes it so much easier to adjust those slow and fast. We've got, everything you'd kind of expect to have on a normal amp: gain, volume, contour, treble, mid, bass. And then we have a channel select for a foot switch, which again, I believe goes through these 2 inputs, which I guess is kind of nice because you can have 2 different things in here. So anyways, nothing really too crazy. Here's what the sub looks like. It's got this styrofoam sort of directional piece to it. And if you notice, let's turn it on so you can kind of see it spin. So this is the slow spin here. We've got it on the slow spin. And so you can see it spinning around. You can go up here and see the horn spinning. This is the slow. And again, this is obviously pretty much right at 12. Let's dial everything into 12. All right. Basically everything's at 12. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Here's fast. That thing gets going pretty darn fast. There's a fast speed there. Yeah, as you can see, let's turn it off and let me show you how it doesn't, they say that it goes directly forward, but it really doesn't. It may be kind of hard to show you this, but it'll probably stop yeah. So I don't know if you could tell, but it's actually kind of facing towards that corner. It's in the general right direction, but not quite. Now, these definitely don't even come close to facing forward when you have them on the stop. But you can definitely tell, I think you can tell at least, that to me it looks like everything just looks really well made. It's just the horn itself looks nice. It is plastic, but the horn looks nice. The styrofoam doesn't look very nice, but I'm going to keep that covered up anyways. But I'm thinking about rolling with it open like this on the front, on the top part. Maybe when I travel, I'll have it closed up, but when I play the gig, I'll have it open like that, at least for monitoring purposes. I don't know. I'm going to experiment. Yeah, that's the Studio 12. Let's move over to the Motion Sound and look at that. Let me get one more thing. I just wanted to show you all the foot switch pedal. This is the foot switch that comes with the Leslie. As you can see, it has the on and off and the slow and fast. Now, again, kind of as I mentioned before, there's no point of this speaker that tells you if you're at slow or fast or stopped. You know, when I just turn it on, it's on, and obviously you can see it going, but you know, that's because I have this thing opened up. You don't necessarily, not everyone's gonna have it like that. That's fast, obviously, that's slow. So let's turn that one off. Now let's go over to the motion sound. So here's the motion sound. Again, this is a rental and it's a lot more used. It's a lot more heavily used. This is the back side. So I'm not going to be able to show you all from this angle. I'll move it around and show you all the front, but this is the back side just because this is how you open it up. The, you know, it's just one back piece. You can see it over there. To me, maybe the woofer director, or whatever you call that piece, it might seem a little bit nicer than on the Studio 12, but otherwise I think everything else looks a little bit cheaper made. If you notice, that's like a piece of PVC or something in there. Also too, something to notice, I don't exactly know what the real difference is here, but this has 2 horns on it, whereas this only has 1 horn on it. So anyways, this is stopped. Here's slow. So here's this guy spinning slow. Bottom rotor. The slow on the bottom rotor for this one is way faster, I feel like, than the slow on the bottom rotor for the actual Leslie. So that's the slow on the 145, while that's the slow on the Leslie 12. So that's the slow, and then here is the fast. I don't know if you can hear that or not because I'm using my microphone, but man, it is noisy. And I don't want to say that it's just the speaker itself that's noisy. I think it's very possible that it's the fact that it's a used piece of gear and it's been used pretty heavily. So again, that's slow. And now if I put it on stop, watch what happens. It stops right there in the front every time. If I start it again, if I just keep going, even if I stop it from fast, here it's going fast, I'm going to put it to stop straight from fast. Well, there you go. I guess that's, you know, kind of about only like 1 o'clock. It's not perfect 12, which, you know, that's kind of what I was hoping for. So now lastly, I just kind of wanted to show you guys here while we're back here, the XLR outs. So that is the left horn, the right horn, and then the lower rotor. So if you see back there, that's one of the microphones, and then that's the other microphone. And then down here, where's the one down here? You know, I'm not really sure where the one on the lower horn is, or the sub is. I guess that sub looks kind of nice. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, let's turn around and let's look at the front. Okay, so here is the motion sound, the front of the motion sound. Obviously, there's kind of a lot more going on with this one. Over here, you got gain. Over here, you've got the inputs, obviously. Both of these, as far as I can tell, they're the same, like, level. There's not a high gain input and a low gain input. They're just the same level. Right next to that, you got gain. You got preamp mode to the right of that. I never really figured out what exactly this preamp mode does. I've twisted it and messed around with it, and I'm wondering if maybe the knob is messed up on this one. After that, you got volume, bass, middle, treble. Then you've got this high cut, you've got horn, and then you've got sub volume. So the horn is obviously just the horn level. The high cut, this is another one that, to me, high cut sounds like you're cutting the high, but whenever you turn this up, you actually get more high end. So I'm not exactly sure what's the deals with that. But both of these, the horn and the high cut, kind of serve to really help you get some of the high end out of the motion sound. And then obviously following that is the sub volume, which on this one, for whatever reason, it just broke on me midway through a gig. It was like it was working, and then it stopped working, and then it worked for a second, and then it stopped working altogether. And then to the right of that, you see there's this horn control section. So you got the acceleration, the deceleration, and then the fast and the slow speed. So, and that's for the upper and the lower rotor. So you got to get in there with a screwdriver to mess with those. And I do think it's cool that you can change the acceleration speed, because you can't do that on the Studio 12. But I never really messed with it, and honestly, like, I don't know, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I never really had an issue with the speed of the rotation. Then over here, obviously, here's where you can see the lights. They're not turned on right now because I turned off the speaker when I turned it around. But you can see that there's the power, and then there's the fast light. So that tells you, you know, what's going on as far as, you know, the speed of the Leslie. And then finally, the last three quarter-inch inputs. There's one that's output. There's a subwoofer output. There's a direct output, and then there's the speed control. Just so everyone knows, that direct output does not go from the microphones inside of the Leslie. So I played a gig where this guy kept trying to take the direct out, and I kept telling him, I don't think that works. I don't think that works. Like, I think that just does direct signal and bypasses the speakers within this amp, and that is exactly what it does. And so if you use that direct output, you don't get that Leslie effect.